Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Everyday Tarot Podcast, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot enthusiast, and professional witch, and today I'm actually sharing my Tarot and Trusting Yourself presentation from Enchanticon. Due to this recording being from a live presentation, the sound quality is not up to my normal standard of quality in these last few seasons, so apologies in advance, but I hope you enjoy this special episode. It is also about an hour and 15 minutes, so you get extra from me today. And if you don't know, Enchanticon is a multi-fandom, unofficial fan convention centered around fantasy fandoms. So previously known as LeakyCon, Enchanticon has moved away from the association with the Harry Potter series due to the problematic views of the author, who has come out very publicly as a TERF or trans exclusionary radical feminist, basically saying that trans women are not women. Enchanticon kind of built upon the foundations laid by LeakyCon that they had been running for years, bringing even more interactive and hands-on programming to attendees. With this transition, they expanded their offerings to encompass a broader range of fantastical worlds, which was so much fun because we got to talk so much more about fandom crossover. This was the first year of Enchanticon, so hosted in St. Louis, Missouri at the magical St. Louis Union Station Hotel. It was a fun, fantasy-packed 3-day convention where I got to attend and speak about my love and crossover of trusting yourself and tarot while relating back to the Harry Potter series and other fandoms. I had a wonderful time, and actually Enchanticon is already scheduled for the same location for next year, July 10th through 12th, 2026, if you're interested in attending. So the site will be linked in the show notes if you want to check it out, or you can go to enchanticon.com. So let's get into it. All right, enjoy. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I am Camille A. Saunders, professional witch, and today we're talking about not just tea leaves, tarot, and trusting yourself. If anyone didn't get a flyer or sticker, I'll have them up at the front. I also have a newsletter, sign up if you're interested, as well for the end. So this is about me. I'm a sex and relationships therapist and coach, a witch, tarot reader, and a podcast host. So if you did get a sticker, that is what that's about. It's for the Everyday Tarot podcast. I've recorded over 150 episodes this year. I'm a little crazy, and I put out episodes every day, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. And right now I've just been doing it on my own. I have some guests lined up for the future, but I love talking about tarot and I have a lot to say, so hence the presentation today as well. I grew up on the Harry Potter series. I was a Bubblecast podcast listener starting in 2006, so I was already very excited to be deep diving in fandom and talking about theories. I love Luna Lovegood. Today I'm wearing a Trelawney fit for my presentation, but Luna's one of my favorites. I love her. She's a bit of a weirdo. I love how direct and open-minded she is. Also, as someone who's neurodivergent, I'm like, Luna, are you autistic? Because I'm getting neurodivergent vibes and I love it. Let's see what else. I'm in Slytherin. I love the Half-Blood Prince book. That's my favorite. I like the Goblet of Fire movie. It's so quotable. My brother and I still, when we see each other, we'll just say random quotes from the movie. Ooh, talking about the dragons. And then some other fandoms that I've enjoyed, hearing and talking about this weekend. I'm a Swiftie. I'm into the Empyrean series, Hunger Games, The Massacres, and I grew up on Star Wars, so that was probably one of my first introductions to fandom, thanks to my dad. And also just a lot of music. My parents went to a lot of concerts and still do. My dad loves female pop stars. Favorite music, just went and saw Lady Gaga in Seattle, big fan. He's also seen Katy Perry. He loves pop music, loves Madonna, all of it. It's super great. Okay. So I'm going to do an introduction to divination. I guess let's do some polls. So who, let's say, has done anything with tarot, has a deck, is tarot curious? Okay, most people. Has anyone gotten a professional tarot reading or a tarot reading from anyone? Okay, a little bit less. Do people have their own decks? Okay, I like half. Hi. Okay, what about familiarity with Harry Potter? Are we okay, mostly, all right. I think that's all. Okay, so I'll go into just divination, the definition of that. We'll talk about divination in Harry Potter, different methodologies that are talked about in the books, and then we sort of have some supporters and skeptics. We hear a lot from the skeptics, I would say, in the books, and we get a lot of divination bashing, I would say, even from the author, which I guess, now I'm like, not so surprising, but interesting when I look back at it. Okay, let's see here. All right, so divination was stated as an elective subject beginning in the student's third year at Hogwarts. So we see Harry and Ron, Hermione all going in when they start there. They do say it's elective. It seems like everyone has to do it in their third year, but I'm not totally sure on that. But we hear about different things just right in the beginning. We hear about scrying. So we also hear about reading tea leaves or tea dregs. We hear about crystal balls. We hear about visions, astrology, horoscopes, dreams, and tarot, although tarot isn't really named. But there is the first time when Harry and Ron walk into the room that he described something like, there's all these weird decks on the bookshelf or something like that. And I'm like, okay, tarot. Later on, we get Trelawney talking about the Tower card in the 6th book. So I have a whole slide on that. But that's kind of the only name we get of tarot. But we do get a lot else, like prophecies, which I would say is definitely divination, though we see that that's quite rare even within the series. So the students get guides and textbooks that they're used to discern or translate what the observed symbols are supposed to mean. They talk about a dream oracle book that they're supposed to refer to. They, in the third, I'm trying to remember the name of the book, I'll have it later, but one of the required books that they have for their third year is also kind of like a reference book, like an encyclopedia. It doesn't necessarily tell you how to do it, but it tells you the symbols, when we see the grim later on. So we get this sort of idea of who either approves of divination or is into it. We hear that Percy and Bill Weasley all got 12 owls, which suggests that they got one in divination unless there's another subject that we're unaware of, or when Dumbledore talks about it when he interviews Trelawney, where we then later learn about the prophecy, he sort of implies that he considered getting rid of the subject, and so perhaps it was not mandatory when Percy and Bill went through, but we sort of assume it was, which is interesting because I would say Percy's a very by-the-book person, kind of like Hermione, and I'm sort of surprised that he would be into divination, but I don't know, we just kind of get a not great view of Percy for the most part in the series. He's very annoying to work from Harry's perspective a lot of the time. Bill, I'm I could see that. Mr. into goblins and danger things and would be more willing to kind of believe in, I don't know, the beyond the mundane, as Trelawney states. We have Lavender and Pravati, who seemingly like divination. We mostly hear about it because Hermione makes fun of them. Don't love that. Come on, Hermione, let people love things. And then we get Dumbledore again to some extent. He's kind of on the supporter and skeptic side because he knows about Trelawney's prophecy. So he knows prophecies are a thing, and I would say basically the prophecy is what determines the entire Harry Potter series, so interesting to say, like, oh, seers aren't real or that kind of thing. So he seems to know about that. He knows about the time that Harry was there when he reported the second kind of, maybe not so much prophecy, but I don't know, it seems like Trelawney's like channeling, or she doesn't remember when she has these prophecies, seemingly, which I'm going to kind of talk about at the later end of the presentation, because I think that's part of why she shows up the way that she does. But yeah, just kind of interesting that, again, like he's aware of two of Trelawney's prophecies and still doesn't think that highly of divination, that he was going to consider getting rid of the subject when he was the headmaster. And then, yeah, we have Harry and Ron who kind of just, I don't know, like slide through the divination subject on like lies and deceit, just always making up their homework, which is kind of funny because, again, they have some things that come true. Hermione, right, who kind of like outwardly dislikes it, gets in fights with Trelawney and then like storms out and decides this is not for her. Again, we kind of have Dumbledore who's like, he never took the subject when he was a student, so again, I would say not necessarily like super excited about it. And then we have McGonagall, who kind of also, we get her perspective of like, don't think that much of it, even though she's later supportive of Trelawney, like as a person, I guess, as a professor in the school when Umbridge is firing her. McGonagall's there. And then, yeah, I would say the author, I was also a skeptic, although again, it's kind of funny to me because I'm like, okay, so you're a skeptic, but also like the whole series is based off of a prophecy from a seer. All right, interesting. Because the author states that she basically relates herself to Hermione and sees like a lot of her own traits in her, kind of made that character like her. So I sort of assumed that the author would not be super into divination either. Yeah, we'll end there on that note. Yeah, so diviners that we see in the series, right? We have Sybil Trelawney, who's the professor. We hear about Cassandra Trelawney, who was Professor Trelawney's, I believe, great-great-grandmother, so a few generations before. And then later we see Firenze, the centaur, coming in and teaching divination once Sybil Trelawney is fired. So with Sybil, what we know is that she's descended from Cassandra Trelawney, who's a famous seer. It's interesting, so Trelawney may have been Cassandra's married name. We don't totally know as like canon, since her great-great-granddaughter still has the surname Trelawney, but maybe Cassandra was a single mom or didn't take her husband's name, whatever it was, and Cassandra Trelawney may have been the Cassandra Blavatsky who wrote Unfogging the Future, which is the book they use in the third year as their main textbook. So I would say, like, I would be willing to believe that. Again, it's like we sort of don't really know much about Cassandra Trelawney other than she was famous. I'll get into kind of mythology on the name Cassandra, what we can kind of assume based off of that, but interesting that if so, then Sybil Trelawney is teaching from her great-grandmother's book, and getting all the students to buy it and read it and use that as their main source material in the third book. So let's talk about Cassandra and like etymology. So Cassandra, the name is taken to mean she who entangles men. The meaning came from Greek culture, translated to mean various things as well, like oracle. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was the princess of Troy. Her beauty caused Apollo to grant her the gift of prophecy. However, when she did not return his love, Apollo placed a curse on her so no one would ever believe her predictions. Which I'm like, ooh, sticky note on that because interesting. According to Achilles, Cassandra promised Apollo favors, but then after receiving the gift went back on her word and refused Apollo. and this made Apollo mad. And again, he couldn't revoke the divine power of her being able to see the future, but he was like, oh, I'll just put a curse on there. So no one actually believes the prophecies. And again, this like cursed gift comes from Apollo, which becomes to Cassandra in mythology, right, separate from Cassandra Trelawney, but endless pain and frustration. She's seen as a liar, like mad by all of her family and by the Trojan people. Her father, Priam, had locked her away in a chamber, guarded her like the mad woman she was believed to be, even though Cassandra made many predictions that went unbelieved. The one prophecy that was believed was that of Paris being her abandoned brother. They also just talk about, just different things with Apollo and this like madness idea. That Cassandra is just one of those like a deep, true insight, but also madness. Which again, I would say kind of historically not surprising to me that those are lumped together. Cassandra plays a role in the Trojan War as well. She's the sister of Paris and Hector, the princes of Troy, and warns everyone about the Greek invasion, but she is ignored. When it looks as if the Greeks have left, the Trojan horse is brought in. She tells everyone that there are enemy soldiers hidden inside, and again, she is ignored. If that is sort of where we're drawing the name Cassandra from, which, again, we know the author likes to pull in names from different mythologies, this is really setting up Sybil Trelawney for not a lot of success later on in the series. So the name Sybil itself, spelled slightly differently, were prophets or prophetesses or oracles in ancient Greece. Like the name Sybil was just sort of like oracle. There are Sibyls that are depicted in statues, like in Greece still. The Sibyls prophesied at holy sites, like temples, sort of, and people would like take pilgrimages to speak to a Sibyl. And a Sibyl is who was like at Delphi or Delphi in Greece, which if you've ever heard of the Oracle of Delphi, like again, people would make like pilgrimages to hear the word of this person who would tell them about the future, or their future in particular. So even just the name Sybil, again, is very much tied to oracles, and there were just different Sibyls located in Greece and Italy, and in different places. And the Sibylline books were a collection of ancient Roman prophecies that were consulted in times of crisis. The books were considered to be a crucial resource for understanding the will of the gods, were believed to have been written by the Sibyls, who again were female oracles, said to have lived in various parts of the world. So again, we have this sort of like deep history of oracles, of women telling the future, and then sometimes, I would say often like in their own lifetime, not treated super well. Everyone thinks they're a fraud, and then sort of later, they're like, oh no, they were great. No, we were big fans. And they definitely were telling the truth. We just didn't think of it at the time. We weren't actually thinking about that, which I'm kind of like, maybe that is how Sybil Trelawney will be seen later on, if anyone tells anyone that she did make these real prophecies. So again, we know about these two accurate ones she makes in the books. The first one being about Harry when he's a kid, or when he's a baby, and that's what leads Voldemort to come and find him and try to kill him unsuccessfully. And then we have the one that is made to Harry when I believe he's like finishing his exam, like one-on-one with her. And again, she sort of like goes into this trance state and does the prophecy about Voldemort, but kind of like Peter Pettigrew coming, going back to Voldemort, or Barty Crouch Jr. Coming back and to serve the Dark Lord. So yeah, classes that we see in the book. Let's see. I'll stay here for now. So we see, like I said, in the third year, we see The Unfogging the Future by Cassandra Blavatsky. That's their textbook. We see Tasseomancy, which is reading tea leaves. Again, that's when you get the Grimm storyline, and there where we see the black dog, or Trelawney sees the black dog in Harry's tea leaves, and everyone freaks out. Apparently they do pyromancy, which is like reading smoke or fire omens. We don't really see it, but it's mentioned as like, oh, we're going to do that, and then once we finish that like section or unit, then we're going to move on in the curriculum and do this other thing. I think we see palm readings, or it's mentioned again, and then they talk about crystal gazing, which would be like the crystal ball depicted on the slide. In the fourth year, I guess they do actually learn astrology, which is kind of interesting because we see that later on from Ferenzi. And then in the fifth year, they do dream interpretation. They have the book, The Dream Oracle, where again, I think we leave more of like a reference book, but talking about their dreams. And again, this is the time where I'll get into what Harry and Ron get up to in their homework, but where we end up with some things that do come true, even though they think that they're like faking their homework. So yeah, let's talk about Ferenzi. So yeah, Trelawney gets fired in book 5 when Umbridge is around. Ferenz gets brought in, and he is a centaur, and it seems like the centaurs all practice astrology. They don't, again, necessarily use that term, but they talk about looking to the stars, like celestial movements, focused on this like long-term, future-looking. Then we get like a great quote from Ferenzi, also a skeptic about Trelawney, that I would say. He says, Sybil Trelawney may have seen, I do not know, but she wastes her time in the main on the self-flattering nonsense humans call fortune-telling. I, however, am here to explain the wisdom of centaurs, which is impersonal and impartial. We watch the skies for the great tides of evil or change that are sometimes marked there. It may take 10 years to be sure of what we are seeing. So again, I would say that's basically Ferenzi talking about astrology, which again, is pretty popular right now. I think maybe less so when the books were being written, or just a little slightly less like mainstream. And they don't use the word astrology, but that's what I would call that. And again, like where they're seeing this, right, we get the Mars is bright tonight, like classic line from Ferenzi to Harry, which Harry's like, cool story, bro, like I have no idea what you're talking about. But again, it's like, seems like the centaurs sort of see in the stars of like where things are leading, but then it is this like longer term future looking. And again, that they clearly think that humans are not so great at it, or choosing different means of divination that are maybe focused on, right, the next 24 hours or the next week or month or even year, whereas the centaurs are looking at this big picture. And then we do get this quote also that Ferenzi taught in the divination class, which again, we don't see like Harry in that class at the time, but we hear about it, that they do burn herbs like sage and mallow sweet to try to see symbols in the smoke. So that would be like reading fire omens or smoke omens, or even like potentially kind of like candle magic. But we don't really see that. But again, sort of like burning incense. But instead of using a stick, right, where everything, the essential oils are in there and it's all compounded, you're using other ways to burn herbs. And then we have the times that we got accurate predictions. So we have Harry and Ron making up predictions, right, in their divination homework. And I believe that this is I'm trying to remember if this is in the dreams one. But this is like before the Triwizard Tournament, so happening in book 4. And they talk about he will be in danger of burns, like the first task of overcoming the dragon. He will lose a treasured possession. So Ron is like trying to interpret Harry's stuff here, which we could say, okay, he lost Ron, his best friend, he had to recover from the mer people. He got stabbed in the back by someone you thought was a friend, potentially like the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Professor Moody, fake Moody, that was Barty Crouch Jr. And then they say finally that he would come off worse in a fight, which could certainly be said of the duel with Voldemort at the end of the fourth book, although he does not come off as bad as Cedric, R.I.P. So again, like while they're making these predictions, like Ron and Harry are sort of like, they are like, yeah, we're making it up. Like, this is so dumb. But it's like funny to me that they think things that all are come true. They also foresee that Harry will lose his bet to Ron about who will win the fight, which they say he will come off worse in. And it also comes true with respect to the Triwizard Tournament, where it's later revealed that like Ludo Bagman lost his bet on Harry, saying that he would win the Triwizard Tournament outright, which we know that like he and Cedric kind of like dual claimed the title, and the goblins come after Bagman for his money because he did not win it outright. And then they also claim that he will drown, which nearly happens in the second task, right? To kind of like him and Ron as he's trying to save everyone with his saving people thing. And then we do get just like kind of a brief glimpse of tarot or cartomancy, which is just reading cards in Harry Potter. So yeah, like I said, in the first class they go to, it says the shelves lining the walls were stuffed with packs of worn playing cards and other items, which I'm like, okay, maybe that's tarot there. And then in book, I'm trying to think, book 4, they would put the years in here, 1996, that would be book 6 maybe. So Harry's going down the corridor, Trelawney is kind of like walking by, she's like reading her deck of cards. Harry ducks behind a statue. I'm sure he has the invisibility cloak on, and he like hears Trelawney, and she pulls the Knave of Spades. So she's pulling from more of like a traditional card deck to read tarot, which is probably how the first people did it. Before we kind of got the Rider-Waite-Smith like imagery of the major arcana and everything. But she says that it indicates a dark young man, possibly troubled, one who dislikes the questioner. And she's kind of like talking to herself while she does this, and she stops like right in front of him. She doesn't know that he's there. And then she's like, oh no, I must be wrong, and like continues on her way. And so, maybe she was reading into Harry without actually knowing that he was there. And then on the night that Dumbledore dies, Harry also encounters Trelawney in the corridor, and she told him that she had done several tarot readings, and she keeps pulling the Tower card. She doesn't understand why. Which again, like, she pulls the lightning-struck tower every time, an extremely ill omen. She also remarks to Ferenzi, who she had actually talked to about the card, I guess, and she says, oh, he knows nothing of cartomancy or of reading tarot. So she was even trying to like talk to someone else that was into divination to be like, do you know what's going on? I don't know what's going on. And she pulls the Tower card. For my podcast, a whole season about tarot and pop culture. And the Tower is definitely one that gets used a lot in pop culture with tarot. We have like the Devil, Death, the Tower, kind of like the big scary cards. Sometimes the Lovers, and then a lot less of the minor arcana cards, but the Tower is definitely up there. But if we kind of take it literally, Dumbledore literally flies off the tower and dies, like the people depicted here. I don't think we necessarily get lightning, although there is maybe like the dark mark is above the castle when they come back from the cave, and so maybe there's a little bit of that imagery there. And again, the Tower is generally about this like upheaval, chaos, change, like a literal architecture crumbling. So it doesn't have to mean like total catastrophe, but we see a lot of chaos like around that time when they're coming back from the cave and all the Death Eaters are coming in. Then we get the kind of like literal Tower moment, which is depicted on the Tower card. Yeah, so now I want to kind of like segue into like why I think talking about this is interesting or relevant at all. I mean, I love to talk about tarot. Like I said, I have a podcast with over 150 episodes of just me jabbering on about tarot. So if you want more of that, like head to the podcast. I'll be there for the rest of the year at the very least. And I'm doing a whole season on the Divination, the Harry Potter series right now. So I'm kind of deep diving there and talking about different characters. But yeah, so from this like mental health perspective, I'm also a therapist and like to use tarot as like a archetypal or symbolic way to talk about things that we're going through. Right, like recognizing our own context and trauma is helpful because it helps us understand better who we are. It allows us to make decisions, like we can kind of differentiate between like our upbringing and maybe like who we actually want to be or what values we're taking from what we learned or what we want to incorporate in our lives. Like how do we want to live our life out? What things do I maybe want to let go of that I did not find helpful, and what things do I want to keep? And I think that with Trelawney, this is very interesting because we get, right, basically the whole book series, everyone's like, Trelawney, such a fraud. She's just like using substances. She's like an alcoholic seemingly, like walking around the castle, like talking to herself, and no one really takes her seriously. She does not have a good time with it. And I think like if she may have acted differently, if she had even been informed that she gave just like these two accurate prophecies. Like I would love her to know more also, but and I'm like, I don't think anyone ever told her, because if the first one came, like, again, when Dumbledore was interviewing her, I don't think he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to tell you what you just told me, this, like, massive amount of information. And then, I don't think, Harry tells Dumbledore about the one that he sees, but I don't think Harry was going to be like, knock, knock, Trelawney, like, after the Battle of Hogwarts, like, big fan, I would just like to let you know that you're not a fraud. I don't see Harry doing that. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm not coming back here. So yeah, I just think like, would she have taken on this identity of seer if she actually like knew that it was real? It seems like it's like this family legacy, right? Her great grandmother was a seer. Dumbledore basically says like, yeah, that's the only reason I interviewed her was because she like comes from this family of seers. So it's interesting also to sort of think about it being like a genetic thing. Again, we don't really get information. We know that like the wizarding, like magical line is seemingly there's like genetics around that, but we don't really know how it's passed on even within the universe. And that does she know she has any actual abilities? Again, we sort of see her, even with the Tower card, right? She's kind of like pulling the same tarot card every day, which if you read tarot for yourself, you're like, oh yeah, I've been there. Like, why am I pulling the same card every week? Am I crazy? What's happening? Or she like really just seemingly wanted someone to be like, no, you're right. And I would think, again, after pulling the Tower card, she would have been like, it's really weird that all these things were happening at a literal tower on top of the astronomy tower. Maybe I am right. But we don't really see that payoff, right? We know she, in the Battle of Hogwarts, is using her crystal balls as a weapon, which, love that for her. She's like, I'll keep one, but no, the rest. My supplies, I'm going to use them. Yeah, she's dropping them, I think, off of the tower, which, I do not want that on my head. Yeah, and I think we sort of, even in the books, I don't know, I'm out here and I'm kind of cosplaying Trelawney, and I'm ooh, people do not love Trelawney. Right? It's not what I see super often. I've seen maybe some Halloween costume styles, but right, we don't really like her in the books because she comes off as a fraud. She kind of just has it out for Harry. She's like, your life sucks. And it's yeah, it does. She's correct. And she's sort of always seeing death or really big things for him. And he's like, yeah, I know, lady, like, please stop telling me. I'm aware there's a lot on my shoulders. So, like, he doesn't really like her. Again, we kind of get Dumbledore of, like, I'm keeping her around because she, like, has this memory, perhaps, in her head of the prophecy, even though seemingly she doesn't really know that she made it. And so he, like, wants to keep her at the castle, I assume, because he doesn't want Voldemort to, like, extract that from her. But that's, like, the only reason that he keeps her around, seemingly, because he doesn't really care when she gets fired. He's like, oh, yeah, but, like, just stay in the castle and everything's fine. And I'm like, what did that conversation look like? He's like, no, like, stay here. Why? You just really gotta. Like, I'm just gonna protect you here. And I'm sure, right, if you grew up in, like, the shadow of her great-great-grandmother, Cassandra Trelawney, who seemingly, like, is well known in the wizarding world, or I don't know, at least post-mortem, she was likely under a lot of pressure to be a seer, right, probably from childhood. Like, despite her inability to accurately predict things, like, using most of the divination methods presented to us in the books, it, again, is kind of, like, ironic that the divination in general, I would say, in the series is, like, seen as telling the future, which Trelawney does through her prophecies, and then everyone's still kind of like, she's a fraud. Also, we, like, kind of have this, like, if you ever, like, think about, like, time turner, like, time jumps in the series or in other magical worlds, like, it's always kind of complicated to do because it's like, oh, well, if you change the thing in the past, does that mean it was always going to happen in the future? Or, like, can you, like, what comes first? And when I would say we definitely, like, get that, because when Dumbledore talks about the prophecy with Harry, he's kind of like, well, it wasn't about you, Harry. Like, it could have been you or Neville, but because Voldemort, like, thought it was you, or, like, thought it could be you, then it was you. And so we kind of have this, like, if Voldemort hadn't assumed that Harry, as a baby, would be the death of him, he probably would not have created that. Like, if Voldemort had just been like, nah, good, like, I don't think a baby's gonna take me down, like, I'm fine. Like, I think what we see in the Hall of Prophecy is that there's, like, all these prophecies that have been made that no one really knows about. And that, like, seemingly kind of, if you, like, don't know about the prophecy, it doesn't really matter, or, like, it doesn't necessarily come true, or maybe it does, but it doesn't, like, have the weight of what we see in the series. And so we can kind of, like, there's this one argument of, like, no matter what you do, prophecies will come true, which is kind of like what happens with Voldemort, right? He's like, I'm going to kill him as a baby, because then he'll have no magical powers, and it's like, no, that didn't work either. Like, now you're going to, like, create, right, with Horcruxes, like, you're going to create something that actually can destroy you. And perhaps, right, if Harry had just kind of, like, led a normal life, like, grown up, had two loving, alive parents, had not been shaped by his trauma, like, he probably would not have taken down Voldemort. He would have been like, nah, like, let's, like, all do it, maybe, right, as, like, the wizarding world, but I don't think he would have been in this, like, chosen one role and, like, taken that on. So I also sort of had this question about Trelawney of, like, what would she have been like if she had been able to, like, be herself? Like, maybe she's, like, yeah, not actually, like, dealing with big prophecies, but she just, like, loves palm reading. Like, and it's interesting to me that also she, like, is a teacher at this school, where I'm like, why did you, like, surround yourself with this thing if, like, you don't, like, do you believe you can do it, but no one takes you seriously? Or, like, do you not believe you can do it, and therefore no one takes you seriously? Where, again, because we kind of, like, see a lot of her drinking also, we get, like, different references of it. She's drinking sherry, and, like, in the room of requirement, like, she's going in there, like, dumping bottles, seemingly hiding it from people. I'm like, I don't think she's having a great time. I don't think she's like, yeah, no, this is great. But yeah, I'm just kind of like, oh, my heart, like, I just wish that maybe she'd been able to, like, be herself in this world and not try to, like, be this, like, great grandmother, great, like, force, and, like, lived up to that status. And again, if we kind of, like, take the Cassandra mythology that we know from Greek mythology and apply it to Trelawney's great-grandmother, it's like, yeah, okay, well, even Cassandra in her own time was not taken seriously. Everyone thought she was mad, and only kind of like later do we kind of see that, like, oh no, they were right the whole time. Like maybe Trelawney would have been less of a fraud, again, like not pretending as much. Like she could have still taught the subject. She clearly knows a lot about things. She has great lines, like talking about like around Hermione, where she just kind of says like, yeah, you're like unwilling to recognize anything that's like beyond the mundane, like beyond the kind of what you read in a book. And we do see that for Hermione for a long time. Like what kind of teacher could she have been if she was more honest about her abilities, like versus intuition, or being able to like learn divination skills? Because the other thing we see with Ferenzi is that like he's like, no, like you're not gonna learn everything the centaurs know. Like it's just, you're like a human, you're a fifth, you're like, it's fine. Like I'm gonna tell you what it's about, and like you can learn about astrology, but like you're not gonna come away from this class being an amazing like astrologist. You're going to learn what it's like to practice it, and then maybe, right, with like decades of study or being in centaur community, like then maybe you can like understand a fraction of it. Like, because we also get this thing, right, with Umbridge, where really the reason that Umbridge fires Trelawney is because she can't like tell the future like on the drop of a hat. And I would say, like, for anyone that practices any kind of divinatory practices, it's like, yeah, that's not how it works. Like, you can't always just, like, turn it on or turn it off, especially, like, under pressure like that. And just sometimes people are unwilling, or, again, they are skeptical, and so it's a lot harder for them to hear or take that on. And then, like I said, yeah, would she have turned to these, like, unhealthy coping mechanisms, possibly like alcoholism and fraud, if she had been able to be more like herself and just kind of like truthful about her capabilities, and maybe like valued her own worth as more than a seer, because again, maybe she like knows all this information because she is a fraud, right? Like because she doesn't really know how to do it, so she studied it all. And maybe this is part of why, like, Hermione and her clash is that she's kind of like, no, like, you can learn it, but also, like, the intuition aspect of it is challenging. And, yeah, I think this is, like, the interesting thing about divination in general is, like, what do we take to be truth and set in stone? Like, do you believe that divination is reading someone's future and that is, like, going to happen? Or do you believe that like divination is a tool to show like potential avenues of the future? But ultimately, right, like Dumbledore says, like it's your choices far more than our abilities that show us who we truly are. Like that's definitely the approach I take to it. I don't think that like things have to be set in stone like that. I think even when I read tarot or something, I'm like, yeah, this like could happen. But also you can do things, like I believe in the free will aspect of it, of like, yeah, you can also do things to change that future if you would like. And yeah, I just think like, it gets me thinking about all these like more esoteric topics about like understanding ourselves and intuition. I just did a whole episode as well, but Harry is actually quite intuitive, and I think that he like refines his intuition throughout the series. I don't know if he would again like name it as so, but basically by the last book he's like, yeah, Dumbledore told me that thing, but like it's not really working for me, so I'm gonna like tune in right to Voldemort and kind of use what I think is gonna help. And I think he's such a good fighter, like at defensive magic, because he kind of knows what people are gonna do. He can read people. And I think like that was part of his like survivor trait, but it's interesting that we get right our like male main character as being the one that is kind of allowed to be intuitive, even like Ferenzi, and then we have like female characters that are like Hermione, who basically is like, no, I want to stay as far away from that as possible. That's not like a real science. And then, I mean, the author, I would say similarly. And then with Trelawney, where, again, we just kind of, it's like played for laughs a lot of the time throughout the series. So I'm going to get close to my time, but I'm interested in doing a tarot spread, but let me finish that. Oh yeah, so here are my conclusions. So, right, you can recognize that maybe even the true talent is like recognizing a prediction, right? Again, maybe if Trelawney had known she had made these predictions, maybe that would have sort of solidified her identity in a way that just kind of talking about it all the time did not. I definitely see divination as potential futures, not fixed destiny, and I would say the series does as well. And like I said, Dumbledore seemingly agrees with this too, that right, we have choice in the matter, even if there are these prophecies about in the magical world that you don't have to do it, you don't want to. I'll talk about this, and then if people want to stay, I was going to do a tarot spread altogether. But yeah, so like I said, I host a podcast, so if you want more tarot all the time, I have under 150 episodes already. It's called Everyday Tarot. You have my flyer. QR code is on there to find it. It's on all the podcast apps. And the stickers are for the podcast as well. I'm on my 13th season right now, talking all about divination in the Harry Potter series. So if you liked this talk, you can check that out. I've deep dived on different characters, on the author. I ranted about the author, let's be honest, but also talking about intuition and demonizing feminine traits, etc. But yeah, other seasons I've done. So the first season was just kind of tarot basics. Someone earlier came in and talked about, is it okay to buy my own tarot deck? And I'm like, yes, please buy your own first tarot deck. I know that's kind of a myth out there that you can't buy your own tarot deck, but I'm like, no, do it, please. Don't wait around if you're interested in it. So that is one of the things I break down in my tarot basic season is myths about tarot. Seasons 2 and 3 are all about the major arcana cards, so I do one card per episode and an overview of the 4 suits. Season 4, I talk tarot and pop culture. So if you want to hear me talk about tarot and White Lotus, tarot and Dune, tarot and Harry Potter, and great depictions and not so great, that's a fun season. I did a season all about tarot spreads, so you can kind of play along with me. I've gone now through every card, so I did a season on Suit of Wands, Pentacles, Swords, and Cups. I talked tarot and witchcraft, so talking about, right, tarot and astrology, or tarot and this. Then I did tarot and plant allies, and tarot and animals. And like I said, right now I'm doing divination in the Harry Potter series, so went along well with this talk. But yeah, and then I am starting a 12 weeks of live, interactive tarot calls for this Tarot for Transformation course. So if you love tarot and you're interested in doing deep dives or getting using it as a spiritual practice, or just kind of learning different tools to utilize your own, doing some self-work with tarot, this is an invitation to do that along with me. So we'll be doing, like I said, 12 weeks of calls with journaling prompts and fun PDFs and kind of embodying different major arcana archetypes each week. And then that's finally about me, which all this info is also on my flyers, and I do have free podcast stickers and flyers if anyone needs more of those. And I do have a newsletter sign up, so if you sign up for my newsletter, I'll give you a free copy of the tarot spread that I'm going to do in my last little bit of time together. And then you can do the spread at home, and it's okay if you just sign up for my newsletter list and then you unsubscribe after the first one. It's just that's the easiest way for me to send you the info, so I will not be too hurt. So yeah, I have a sign-up form up here if you're interested in that. And I created this spread just for this convention, so it will be special in that way. And then, like I said, if you're interested in talking about tarot, I'll be here until tomorrow evening. So if you're around and you want to talk more tarot or do a reading or anything, find me after. or use my contact info. Okay, I'll go back to the spread, but I'm going to have to relocate to the table to do the spread together, and people feel free to leave. I know I'm getting close, but I think I still have 10 minutes left, so I was going to do a spread all together. I'm going to grab my cards and go sit down. And this was my first tarot deck. I talk about my first deck story on the first couple episodes of the podcast, but I was like walking into this clothing boutique like every day. I used to pass out on my way to work, and I was like, why am I here? Like, it was these kind of expensive clothes, handmade clothes. There was like a single tarot deck, and then like a bunch of jewelry and stuff like that, and this was the tarot deck that was there, so it is special to me. It's called the Sassorabito Tarot. It's made by an artist that's local to me in the Seattle area, and it's kind of Pacific Northwest and like Japanese inspired. And yeah, people can come closer if you want. I'll like pass the cards out and pull them, but I probably am gonna have to like use 2 hands to do some of this, so then pick my microphone back up. But oh yeah, so I put the spread up there. So we're going to do 5 cards: the Whisper, the Static, the Compass, the Leap, and the Anchor. And this is kind of like a trusting yourself. Thank you. There we go. Thank you. You improvise. It can be like on my podcast. I have my mic. Okay. All right. Yeah. I think I can do that. Okay, so we're going to do the Whisper first. So this whole spread's about trusting yourself. So what is my intuition quietly telling me right now? And then we get this sort of the seed of inner knowing that may be easy to overlook. And I just usually shuffle a couple times. I cut my deck and then I pull a card generally. These cards are very well worn, so easy for me to bridge. So yeah, what is my intuition quietly telling me right now? Okay, I pulled the Chariot, Major Arcana card. The vibe, as you can kind of see here, is like, usually it's like a literal chariot being pulled by a horse. I pull the Chariot a lot. It's a very my boyfriend talks about that when you go to the gym, he wants to listen to music that makes him feel like the Kool-Aid man, like you can smash through a wall. And I'm like, that to me is like a Chariot card vibe. Like, you're just going and you're like, I don't really care nothing can stop me. I'm just like going. So this is what my intuition is telling me right now. So in the Tarot deck guidebook here, it says the Chariot is like a warrior, signifies victory over your opposition. Through strength of will, determination, self-confidence, and control, you will succeed in your campaign. This card represents a battle that can be won. Being a battle, the tactics are militaristic. You need bravery, conviction, and discipline to lead to eventual success and recognition. So if you have a current obstacle, this card can be a suggestion to brace yourself, hold steady, and power your way through the conflict. So I'd say kind of that last bit is probably like the meaning making from this of like, there might be an obstacle. Like I said, right, this card's all about like the smash through the wall energy and just like brace yourself, right? I mean, it makes me think of Harry, right, going through the platform 9 3/4 wall early on, right, where he's like, I guess I'm going to do it. Like, I guess this is how magic works. You just got to, like, believe. And then I'll go through it. Okay, so let's pull our second card. Okay, do people want to look at the card? I can, like, pass it around. Yeah? Okay. If someone can come grab it, then you can pass it around. So that was our first one. I don't care if people touch my decks. I run, like, a tarot meetup where I live, so I bring all my decks, and we play a lot, so... that does not bother me. Okay, so the next one is the Static. So what's clouding or confusing my inner voice could be like external noise, fear, or old patterns that make trust harder. Okay, well, this one fell out, so I pulled the Strength card, which this one depicts a lion, which is often what's on this card. So I'll look in the guidebook. But another Major Arcana card, which I generally read as like, okay, this is like powerful. A listen up kind of card. Usually the Minor Arcana can be just a little quieter, but we pulled 2 Major Arcana cards already. Okay, so the Strength in here is called the Lion Tamer. It suggests a firm but gentle dominance. This isn't strength in the literal muscular sense, but strength of mind and character, and the hidden power of vulnerability and compassion. This card often illustrates a woman demonstrating control over a lion with kindness, composure, slow gentleness, and softness. The Strength card represents patience, self-control, stability, and discipline. It may suggest a challenging situation that will require a soft but strong approach to resolution. So like soft but strong. So if we interpret this as what's clouding or confusing my inner voice, old patterns, or fear, I would say maybe it's like finding that balance between like soft and strong. I know sometimes I struggle with that, of like I have the thing I want to say, right? I'm overstimulated, and now I have the direct thing to say. But how do I say it nicely? Or how do I say it in a way where people are actually going to like take that in? And again, that can sometimes be like fear or like old patterns. If someone used to get upset with us, or like used to, again, that kind of, it was hard to trust. That maybe right now that like clouding the inner voice is finding the like softer, gentler way to share things with people, when sometimes our first instinct can be like, I'm frustrated. Again, at least for me personally. Okay, the next one is the Compass. How can I tune in and hear myself more clearly? Yeah, I'll keep passing around. Thank you. Practices, perspectives, or habits that reconnect you to your truth. Okay, I pulled the Emperor, but in reverse. I pulled this card the other day, actually twice the other day. So how can I tune in and hear myself more clearly? Practices, perspectives, or habits. So this deck does do reversal definitions, so I will take this reversed. I don't always, some decks I have an herb deck that personally, I'm like, I don't know how to be opposite of like a sunflower. Like just sometimes where I'm like, it just doesn't totally make sense. This one I probably will read in reverse. So Emperor is usually, I mean, you can kind of see this card. It's like a guy in a suit, but you don't see their face. To me, I think this deck even says that. I'm like, this is like daddy energy, or like very dominant, authoritative energy. And that's kind of like sometimes the like the shadow side of the Emperor card. Yeah, and here it says the king, boss, or dom, the archetype of male energy, authority figure, ruler, ego, may represent a father figure, position of power, stern, rigid, commanding. So we think about this being in reversed. So reversed, it would be more like inconsistency, unpredictability, and childishness, or like naivete, maybe. How can I tune in and hear myself more clearly? I get the vibe that like it's saying we need to be more consistent and predictable, like with ourselves, that like maybe with our practices, whether that's like a spiritual practice or like you're in school and you really are like trying to take that seriously, or like you have a new job, so like with work or just anything like that, that there's this maybe like what's the right word, like the tendency to maybe like not want to take it very seriously, or get like kind of like overworked or burned out. And I feel like this card's telling us like, ooh, actually we need like maybe some more boundaries, or like maybe be a little bit more strict about your routine. because that can also be, yeah, you can pass that one. Because it's like, how can I hear myself more clearly? Sometimes when we're kind of all over the place, it can just be hard to like tune into that intuition. So maybe, right, if you're doing tarot, it's like pull a card a day, like make a practice of it, and try to see, like connect with, okay, I pulled this card, and by the end of the day, like where did that come up? And it doesn't have to be a card a day. It could be like I pull a card every week, and that's the vibe for the week, or like I do a spread at the beginning of the month or on a full moon or something, but just like something that's providing more structure. Like I feel like it's saying like we need a little more structure, and sometimes we have to provide that for ourselves. Which again, like as a neurodivergent person, I'm like, ew, I don't want that. No, thank you. But I also know it's helpful for me, right? I don't know, with like travel and stuff, it can be very like, yeah, this is super fun, and also like all my routines are crazy, and I'm not sleeping, and it's fine. It's fine. What do you mean? This is a problem. Okay. The next one is the leap, a step I can take to act in alignment with my inner knowing. I also pulled this one in reverse, but it's the King of Wands. Tangible action to build trust in yourself through experience. This one's also kind of like it makes me again think of like a routine. The King of Wands, I don't know, it gives like, especially on this card, it's like gentler energy, even though it is like a king card. Wands are like fire elements, so sometimes like creativity comes up there. Oh yeah, the king. Okay, so upright, it's about charismatic, being bold and forceful, a good communicator, inspiring, creative, natural leader, visionary, disciplined. Okay, so I was on the right track there. Looking at the long term and eagerly accepting challenges. She says, like the illustrator says, I've illustrated this king as an intelligent and good-tempered, always a little bit of a smile. Branches seem to be growing from his torso, indicating his infectious optimism. So in reverse, the goal-oriented King of Wands can be rather negative. In business, he may be ruthless and unfeeling or abusive with his power. Alternatively, as the king, you may not be as confident in your vision as you could be. Don't be afraid to adapt his admirable qualities. So, right, I'm pulling for a step I can take in alignment with my inner knowing. That last piece feels very resonant as like, no, actually, like, it's okay to be confident in your vision, and like, don't be afraid to kind of, right, you can be the king and still be nice. And like be caring of the people that you are going with, or like be caring of your creativity. Like again, you can have structure and boundaries and still like be very kind to yourself, which I think like again can be hard. Sometimes we like associate boundaries with just like rigidity, which can feel like challenging. And yeah, I pulled that one in reverse. And then the last one is the anchor. So what will sustain and deepen my self-trust long-term? Ongoing support, values, or reminders that keep you grounded in your own wisdom. So yeah, how are we gonna, right? We have our structure around our practices. We have this maybe like long-term goal of what we're doing. How can I support myself, right? How do I actually keep doing it every day, or pulling a card every week? Oh, I pulled the Fool. How nice. So the Fool is considered the number 0 in the major arcana, so it's the first card. In one of my decks, they call the Fool the Void, which I really like. Usually the Fool is kind of like blissfully, ignorantly about to step off a cliff. And right, we get here like an older guy who's looking like jaunty. He's like, oh, it's fine. Everything's fine. Usually the Fool is kind of about like, I'm like back to school energy. I'm here, right? I'm ready to learn. So I would say this is kind of like, yeah, like keep your like curiosity going, right? When we have challenges, maybe again in like business or relationships, that like approaching it with fresh eyes, or thinking about like, oh, what was I so like attracted to about this person when I first got to know them, right? Oh, now I live with them and like some of their habits annoy me. But what were kind of like the early energy, the new relationship energy of it all. So yeah, and here it says the fool is the jester, the madman, or the beggar, or the wanderer in this deck, the beginning of your journey. While commonly seen, being acting as a fool is a bad thing in a sense that is not so. The fool has beginner's mind, no strings attached, and is free from fear and preconception. He is the wanderer, childlike and innocent, able to take risks and be spontaneous. The fool can represent a new start, a new path, or beginning, and great potential. He is the spirit in search of experience, open and unaware of his supposed limitations. Again, that's kind of like the hopeful side of the fool, is that, right, like, he's just blissfully walking off a cliff. He's like, someone will catch me, it'll be fine. Significant change may be coming, take risks, confront fears, embrace the unknown. And again, this is under the, what will sustain and deepen my self-trust long term. It sounds like, like embodying that, like, I'm still learning, right? If you're starting tarot, if today you're like, oh yeah, I want to have more of a practice, or someone told me that they just bought a tarot deck here from one of the vendors, and so maybe it's fun to get to know a deck too, of just thinking about, okay, again, like if I'm going to pull a card a day, like how am I actually going to do that? Am I going to like create a practice around it? Am I going to, if I haven't pulled it before bed, I just pull it and look at it? How do we like support ourselves, or even have other people help support us as we like go out and try to have this, right, like hopeful energy, which can also feel sometimes like it's a lot of work to be hopeful sometimes, and to kind of think like, oh yeah, like I can still have all these good things happen to me, or I can still be this creative force, even when like that can feel hard or we feel run down. All right. Well, thank you all for staying. If I can get all the cards back, I have two up here. I usually like to take a picture of my cards, like at the end of the spread. I don't always look back at it, but I always tell myself I will. Sometimes it's that, like, if you pull the same card, oh, perfect, thank you. If you pull the same card, like, every week, like a Trelawney, right, pulling the tower every day, you're like, oh, yeah, no, I remember. But sometimes I'll be like, oh, I just pulled that card, did I? And, like, look at the spread for it, so that can be kind of interesting. But, yeah, thanks so much for joining me, you all. Thank you. And like I said, I have stickers and flyers still here if you want more info about me or anything. And I have a newsletter sign up if you want the spread that we did today. I'll just send kind of like this and tell you which questions, which were for which ones, and then you can do it on your own as well. Thank you.
You said that Dumbledore never took
Divination.
But obviously Voldemort took it seriously.
Yeah.
So do you think he took it?
Interesting. I mean, it seems like when we have Harry's time, obviously we know Dumbledore's like older. I mean, not Dumbledore. Dumbledore's definitely older. Voldemort is older, but he's like the same age as like Bellatrix and stuff, right? And they're not that old. They're in their like, I don't even think that old. I think they're like 30s.
I don't know.
Everyone in the movies is like aged up, so it's very hard. Okay.
That's the vibe. They seem late 20s when.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because Harry's parents were like early 20s when he was a baby. Yeah. So yeah, they would have been like early 30s when he was like 11. So by the end of the series, like 40s.
That's how I think.
And we know Tom Riddle is like not quite their age, but like around there.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it seems like it was like a standard to have divination in the school. But Voldemort seems very superstitious.
He seems to appreciate it in a way that like Dumbledore was like, never did.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was to his benefit because he was so powerful, maybe partly because he took that seriously.
Yeah, well, and we see him when he's a kid, right, that he seems to have like a like he knows how to do magic without anyone telling him, right? Which we see like for most of the magical like kids that, again, like maybe they catch themselves if they like were gonna fall, but not like they were manipulating children at the age of 6 to like do what they wanted. Yeah, I've been watching The Magicians because the actors have been here, and there's like a character in there that is a demigod, and he like didn't know that he was like, every time that he would ask people for things that they would just do them.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
And I'm like, oh, like that seems like what Tom Riddle was like as a kid. He was just like, I don't know, everyone just does what I want. Like I'm just like very, and it's like, no, that's like how the magic works. But yeah, he seems very like intuitive in that way too. But yeah, it's interesting. I would say, yeah, he does run more like superstitious side. So maybe he does kind of believe in all these other things.
And just real quick, you were saying for the tower, you didn't see lightning.
Yeah.
But I mean, Harry is sometimes thought of as lightning.
Oh yes, we have literal
like it was on the tower.
Harry's lightning star. Tower combined. That's true. Thank you. Thank you.
This is honestly one of my favorite.
Oh, good. Well, thanks. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, oh right. I mean, like, I have migraines, and I'm like, oh my God, I would love to do, like, a Harry chronic pain, because, right, like, no one understands how his scar works, and he's just in pain all the time, and, like, in the wizarding world, they seem to just, like, yeah, I'll just be like, whatever, like, what a weirdo. Yeah, and even it's, like, we kind of don't know, like, is it intuition or like is it Voldemort literally in his head? Like it's kind of hard sometimes to like differentiate it, but yeah, I was trying to think of like who in the series actually like embodies intuition. I was like, oh, actually Harry does a lot, but you're right, he isn't believed, and he's probably believed slightly more because he's a child, but at least he's a boy. So that's like slightly more like, right, if Hermione had been the intuitive one, then we would have kind of gone very much down like a stereotypical, like, females are not believed, which is probably why Hermione was like so triggered by it. Again, like, I know this, I feel like we know this about J.K. Rowling now, that like also she's very triggered by like the very feminine traits. She makes all of her characters that are hyper feminine, like Umbridge or wearing pink, are like evil. And it's like, no, you can like be hyper feminine, it's fine. And smart, right? Like, there are all these different things, but yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You mentioned that.
Yeah.
What plot?
Mm.
Because I have a mom who does it, but when I've been telling it to my mom, because my mom has like absolutely bored.
Yeah.
She's like, "You're going Catholic. How does how does this should not add up?"
Yeah.
But trying to explain it, like, how did that end up in that?
Yeah, I know for me, it was like I read tarot on my own. Like I told some people earlier, but I used to like post spreads just like on my Instagram when I would do them. I would just be like, oh, these are like this, like, oh, these are the cards I pulled today, or like this is the message I got. And then I started having people be like, oh, like I didn't know you read tarot, like read for me, and like people like coming out of the woodwork. But yeah, I think I went to a retreat in my area that was called Therapists Who Tarot.
Oh.
And we were taught actually how to like clinically write notes and like practice, like do tarot in sessions, while also maintaining kind of like our ethics and respecting people's spirituality if they would be opposed to tarot, kind of stuff like that. So that's like kind of how I learned and got to be at the point where I like felt okay doing it in sessions. Because sorry, my phone's being weird. To some extent, yeah, it's just like, how do you connect it? And now I just kind of like have it in my bio or stuff, and people will come to me, or like clients will be like, oh, like, can we do some tarot in session? And I have like a big workbook of like different like questions, or like pull, right? Like, oh, pull like how you're feeling today, and then like someone else in your life, or kind of using it in different ways clinically. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of therapists are also like highly intuitive, spiritual people, but kind of grad school like beats it out of us. But like, You
Yeah.
need like these rules and like, oh, there's ethics, and it's like, okay, sure. Like I don't want to like force my spirituality on someone else, but like also like there are a lot of Christian therapists that do that a lot. So it's very normalized. So yeah. This one?
Yes.
I'm trying to think. I think I got it in 2018.
Okay, because I was holding
Oh. Oh.